again, everybody. So today I'm back, and today I'm going to be doing my last TBR of 2016. That's such a depressing thing to say. I can't believe 2017 is so close. But without further ado, I'm going to get straight down to telling you about the books I'm going to be reading in the month of December. All of my books this month are pretty much of one very specific genre, and for once that isn't non-fiction, but of course, wouldn't be right if I didn't read at least one non-fiction in a month. So this month is going to be Shrinks by Jeffrey Lieberman. So this is in that same kind of vein as Do No Harm, Being Mortal, the kind of book which you guys will already know that I absolutely adore. Them kind of smart, medical, psychological non-fiction books. And this basically looks into the history and kind of case studies of psychiatry, which I think is a really interesting thing. I think mental illness is fascinating, and the different ways it's treated. And Do No Harm covers the kind of surgical elements and the chemical elements. This deals a lot more with a lot of the very specifically either drug or kind of interaction-based treatments. Really interesting, really look forward to reading it. I love this kind of mixture of history and non-fiction. I think it's going to be brilliant. The remaining 4 books on my TBR then are all from the kind of sci-fi, fantasy, horror section. I've been reading a lot of this kind of book recently, and I've got a lot more here that I really can't wait to get stuck into. And first up in them is H.P. Lovecraft's The Whisper in the Darkness and Other Stories. So Lovecraft is obviously basically the father of horror fiction. A lot of what we now term as horror fiction and the kind of the tropes and the cliches that are used all the time came from this man. And I've never read any Lovecraft. Obviously things like The Call of Cthulhu are so well known. They're such like just a basic concept, and the name Cthulhu is like so ingrained into this kind of literature, but films, TV, games, everything. And I'm looking forward to really getting stuck in. I'm concerned the language might be a bit archaic, but I've read other classics and it's not really got too much in the way. And I think because he's just so iconic and his writing and just the whole stories he creates are so psychological and captivating, I'm going to love him. So next up then is another horror book, but one of a very different style, and that's Hex. So I don't know much about this. I know it's something to do with a witch. And I kind of get kind of Blair Witch vibes, that kind of like atmospheric, foresty, rural, witch haunting, murder, death, you know, all the usual. And I'm just really intrigued to read it. I've not read many kind of horror books that aren't psychological, that are much more about a physical thing that is causing you some real trouble. And I'm looking forward to reading this. It's a really clever advanced reading copy. It doesn't really say much. Evil doesn't sleep, it waits. But I've heard a lot of really good things about this, and I'm really intrigued to get stuck into it. So moving slightly away from the horror into something a little bit lighter, there's Naomi Novik's Uprooted. So I've heard a lot about this, and it's been on my shelf for ages, and I keep meaning to read it. And it's basically kind of like twisted fairy tale style. And I love a good twisted fairy tale. I think they're really interesting, unusual ways of kind of taking what people think they know and turning it on their head, all these tropes, and tweaking it that little bit. And I've read a few books along this line recently, loved it, but this has won numerous awards, got a ton of praise, and it's the kind of traditional fantasy I've not read in a while, and I can't wait to get stuck into it. Last up then is The Map of Bones. So this again is another advanced reading copy. This is the sequel to The Fire Stone by Francesca Haig, which I read 18 months or so ago, and it's definitely inspired by things like Divergent and The Hunger Games, but essentially it's about a world where every birth spawns twins, one alpha and one omega. The alpha is kind of a perfect human, the omega's got some kind of deformity of some sort, whether it's a lost limb, or in the case of the main character, some kind of powers. So it's quite interesting, and it's about how the society's broken down between those two. It's got kind of things about persecution and identity, and it's just quite interesting. I've not rushed to pick up the second one. I've had this for about a year or so and not read it yet, but I think it's an interesting story, and I'm looking forward to getting stuck back into that world. It was quite a clever concept. I'm looking forward to seeing how that's developed in this one. So there we have it then. I'm actually being quite sensible this month, which is a terrifying prospect. I've got quite a busy December, and obviously with Christmas you never read as much as you think you're going to, so I'm going to try and get these 5 books read, and then that will wrap up my reading for 2016. I'm looking forward to doing my wrap up video to see what I've read this year and what are my challenges and targets I hit and didn't hit. Don't think I did very well, spoilers, but I'm looking forward to getting back into that, and I can't wait to read some of these books. Do leave a like and subscribe and comment, except if you've read any of these books or you've got any suggestions. What are you guys reading over the holidays? I've not really gone very festive. You may well have done. But other than that, my Twitter and my Goodreads and all of the usual stuff is in the description. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon with my next video.